And welcome back, everybody, to Day 2 of E3 2013 at Rage Select.
Hey, synchronicity.
Mm-hmm.
Not even really synchronicity, but just synchronous. I'm losing my shit.
Yeah.
This is Jason.
I'm Jeff. Jason,
I'm up. I'm good.
You just, like, your head down on that table, like, with your hand on the beer, and I was like, I'm waiting for the snores to come out any second.
Oh, man. That brief adrenaline burst from talking about Black Flag just left me, and I was like, okay, I'm done now.
Well, all right. I'm gonna talk for a few minutes about something that I saw today.
Now I'll nap.
Okay, you could just, you can nod off.
I'm out.
All right, Dark Souls 2, everybody.
Oh, put your pants back on.
I know. I don't have to take. I'm worried, Jason.
Yeah,
I'm kind of worried, man. Like,
well, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Why are you worried?
All right. Well, so when I went into the Namco Bandai booth. And we talked about that Tekken nonsense. Before that meeting started, I had a chance to just pull up Dark Souls 2 and play it. So I played it, and it was very much the demo that we saw, and I believe it was like IGN or something a while back where they had had them in there and they were just walking around. Okay. So if you're not a fan of Dark Souls, you might want to skip forward 10 or minutes or an hour or what.
Yeah.
Cause I'm going to get into some of this granular shit that only people that play Dark Souls are probably going to understand. So here is the good news. The engine looks fantastic. Like the lighting models and everything on this engine, it was running on PlayStation 3, I believe, look absolutely fantastic. Like deep, rich lighting. The art style looks really good. The enemies look really good. It very much has the same control schema for locking on and attacking as Dark Souls. Let me tell you some of the things that I'm a little bit concerned about. And this, as I said before, is kind of granular stuff, but for me as a Dark Souls fan, this is stuff that I wanted to know about. So in Dark Souls, you remember when we played Dark Souls, you got your Gatorade, right? That you drink that brings back your life.
Oh, yeah.
Estus flasks, right? Yeah. There's only two items or three maybe, but the main healing item in the game is Estus flasks.
Electrolytes.
Exactly. It's what plants crave. And one of the whole points of Dark Souls was that you get a certain number of them, and then you have to get to the next bonfire in order to replenish your Estus flasks. So you were forced to learn the level in between that bonfire and the next bonfire, because if you ran out of healing items halfway through and you got hit, well, you're just kind of fucked. But then when we go back to the bonfire, it makes all those enemies come back. So you're basically training yourself on how to get good. Now, in Demon Souls, you didn't have flasks. You had it was like normal RPG. You had grass that you would pick up, and you would eat handfuls of this grass.
Like a crazy person.
I know. Like your dog, and then you go... But the thing is that by the end of Demon Souls, you got into a situation where you had so much of this grass stockpiled that you could just brute force your way through levels without having to learn them, because you had so many healing items you could do this.
It was laced.
Right, exactly. Because I didn't know that you like to get wet. So one of the more horrifying things that I saw here was that they have these new items, and there were two of them that you got that were these little healing gems.
Was one of them a Prima guide to this fucking game?
No, because fuck that. Why would any normal red-blooded American human being use a game guide for this game? What are you, full of girly ribbons in your hair? Anyway.
How Jeff measures his manliness.
Yeah, how many ribbons are in your hair. But there are these items in this game on the healing side that are like heal over time items, where you use them and then your health bar goes back up again. Enemies drop them as you're walking through the level. And I said to one of the developers, I was like, it looks like these guys are dropping those items. Are those like healing items? Like outside of the Estus flasks? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, I don't really know if I like that. He's like, oh, you're going to need those items. It was like, that's not the point of Dark Souls. The point of Dark Souls isn't like, bro, this game is super hard. You need more potions to get to the next level.
I love it how Jeff is telling the developer that that's not the point of the game that he made.
Well, they were from Namco. They were actually from the publisher.
Oh.
Like, I asked them a bunch of granular questions about the game, and a lot of the answers they gave me were, From Software didn't tell us, so we don't know.
Yeah.
There were also items that were in your healing, you're down on the D-pad, your item slot, that would replenish your magic spells, which in the game, magic was a certain number of charges that you did the same as Estus Flask. You had to go back to a bonfire to recharge them. So when you played as a wizard, you had to manage your spells because you only had a certain number from here to the boss. So like if you were trying to get to a boss, you couldn't waste all your best spells on all the trash mobs getting up to the boss. You had to save them and learn how to play the game a better way. now you have an item that you can just use that will give you back charges to your spells. I'm not a big fan of that either. Like, I don't think that's interesting. The other thing is that this gameplay vertical slice was supposed to be through kind of the middle of the game, and apparently From Software gave them 4 pre-arranged classes: a warrior, a sorcerer, a temple knight, and a dual-wielding swordsman, which I'll come back to that in just a second. Whoever spec'd these characters sucks. Either whoever spec'd these characters sucks, or the weapons in this game they chose the worst weapons to give you and then didn't upgrade them, because the normal enemies were very difficult. And by this point in the game, like, there's a difference between an enemy who is difficult because they have a certain type of AI to them and they have certain attacks that are hard to avoid or whatever, and just an enemy that has a fuck ton of hit points because go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
And that seemed to be these sorts of guys that I was running into, were guys that had a lot of hit points because go fuck yourself. Now, part of this may have been the fact that they've revamped the parry and the backstab system to the point where in Dark Souls, when you parry, if you parry, you get a free, like, riposte attack that does, like, huge amount of damage. And when you backstab, you do a backstab attack. When you do those animations in Dark Souls, your character is invincible. And they found that this was too much of an advantage for the player. So now, when you do either one of those, you will knock the other character down. For backstab, you hit him with the palm of your weapon. For the riposte, you kick him down onto the ground. And then you have the opportunity to hit them again because you're vulnerable the entire time you're hitting them. There's a lot of granular stuff that I'm just going to list off real fast here, because it's stuff that Dark Souls people probably want to know. You can now have 3 weapons or 3 shields in your left and right inventory slot. I could not get them to tell me whether that affected equip weight or not.
I could not tell them. They could not get them to tell me if it affected equip weight or
That's
not.
important. It's important. You can now dual wield weapons, and in Dark Souls you could dual wield weapons, but you couldn't actually hit anybody with your second weapon. You could only block with it, which has some weird. There's sometimes when that is actually makes some sense, but now you can attack with the weapon that's in your offhand. So they had a character that was spec'd for dual wielding, where you can attack with the left hand, you can attack with the right hand, or if you hit the triangle button, you attack with both hands at the same time. They don't have any more classes in the game. You basically start with a blank template and you adjust your stats accordingly, and then it puts you into a class. So your starting equipment and stuff isn't as reliant on your class as it used to be in Dark Souls. Or light is incredibly important. There was a couple places, like in that demo, where you have to light a torch, or else you've got guys that don't see you. They also talked about the enemy AI being a lot more merciless and evil and mean and shit. Like in Dark Souls, if you were in a shitty situation, you could like disengage, turn around, and run in the opposite direction. And they said, like, if an enemy catches you trying to do that, there's certain enemies in the game that'll like trip you as you're trying to run away from them and then stab you while you're down on the ground. You have enemies where you saw this in the IGN demo, where if you try to backstab them, they've got these giant armored shells in their back, and they just like jump backwards and smash you on the ground. So yeah, there's a lot of changes here, and I'm not entirely sure if I'm altogether comfortable with them, because it seems like some of the development philosophy for this is going less in the direction of the Dark Souls unforgiving gameplay and more in just like, well, you guys like hard games, so we made this way harder because you guys like hard games. And I don't know if this is just because I'm not used to the game and I was trying to play it like Dark Souls, and I was kind of getting my ass handed to me a little bit, and it was just like, well, fuck you, man. Like, I'm good at this game. I played it for hundreds of hours.
Jeff got mad, started throwing over chairs.
Yeah.
This isn't right.
I table flipped the demo station and was just like, fuck you, I'm out of here. The other thing is that a lot of the characters that they had for us to play were very heavy armor characters, and in my opinion, heavy armor characters are for like noobs and the first time you play the game, because why would you dodge why would you block or get hit when you could just dodge out of the way? Other than that, I didn't see a lot more. I saw one boss fight that was this guy called the Mirror Knight, and it did something interesting where I can't remember what the name of the boss was, but in Demon Souls, there was a boss in the game that would be randomly populated with another player if a player was online. Like, it would bring somebody else into your game to essentially be the boss of the level. And this boss, the Mirror Knight, had a shield that was a mirror, and he would set it down and essentially summon another antagonistic player into the game out of that shield for you to fight. It's a pretty cool mechanic.
That's neat.
The game looks really fantastic. Like I said before, it plays a lot like Demon Souls. They showed one of the switchbacks like they have in Demon Souls, but it was very, very hidden. Like you had to have an enemy throw a bomb at you when you were standing in front of some barrels so that it opened up this wall. It was kind of like, I don't know. Some of the switchbacks in Dark Souls were very important. Oh, here is one thing that is very important. Is apparently you can warp around through all the bonfires without getting the Lord Vessel and putting it down, which is a good thing, even though you probably have no idea what that means.
I stopped listening a while back.
Okay, that's good. That's very good. And other than that, it looks like you got you can get up to 2 invaders now, so you can do 2v2 PvP. You can still has up to 3 people can join, or 2 other people can join in your game. A lot of that stuff seems unchanged. I couldn't get them to tell me much about the multiplayer because they didn't know. But it's coming out next year. I'm cautiously optimistic.
Okay.
Like it's a lot like Demon Soul or Dark Souls, and I think that some of my hesitation may be because I'm so familiar with Dark Souls, and this is changed from Dark Souls, that I have that same syndrome that a lot of people have with a lot of different things where I'm like, I don't like the fact that you changed my favorite game, bro. I don't like the fact that you're trying to add mechanics to my favorite game, but who knows? Maybe you get used to it and it's a way better experience. It's just like I said, I worry that they're just jacking up enemy attack power, speed, and armor and hit points for the sake of difficulty and nothing more. But I don't know. I don't know. Like, I'll be honest. I came out of Dark Souls 2 going, I really need to play like a good 30 hours of this to know whether I like it or not. Whereas I came out of The Witcher 3 going, when is that coming out? I want to play that fucking immediately right now. So that was Dark Souls 2. I'm going to be keeping a very close eye on it.
Okay.
I could get them to tell me anything about the story. Could get them to tell me anything about the world. Could get them to tell me anything about a lot of things that I don't think they knew because they're keeping it all under wraps. But so yes, Dark Souls 2, definitely a highlight of the day because it was interesting. They also had this thing where they said if any of the journalists that came in there could beat this level boss and the level they were showing off, they would give you a free t-shirt. And I really wanted to do that, but there was like a million other games at the Electronic Entertainment Expo that we are at today that it was like, I can't stand here for 3 hours and try to beat this boss. Like, there's so many other things that we have to look at. Such as, Jason?
This one, I really don't have a lot to say about this one. I was watching some guys play it. It was pretty much all over the Sony area, and that's Diablo 3. Mm-hmm. Actually, it was Sony and Xbox. And yeah, it looks like they've successfully ported it over to consoles. And
the hell you
good.
Say?
I know. It looks
they said
good.
It couldn't be done, right?
Right. Yeah, it looks good. It seems to play smooth. The only thing was, how do you deal with all the menu items and everything? But it seems like people were shifting back and forth to the different options because they've got stuff mapped to like, X, Y, B, and A. Mm-hmm. And everybody was shifting back and forth with ease, and everybody seemed to be enjoying it. I never saw a free version of it that I could just jump on and start playing.
Now,
so
I walked by that booth earlier, and I thought I saw 2 people playing like same screen co-op with it.
I believe so.
Okay,
yeah, which that could be a hell of a lot of fun.
Sure, yeah. I mean, Diablo 3 was a fun game. Mm-hmm. It didn't have a lot of staying power in my mind. Like, once I beat it, I didn't really feel a great urge to go back and play it all over again.
Right.
But I could definitely see it being the sort of thing that if it was freely available, or not freely available, but if it was available for purchase on the Xbox or the PS3, that it would be the kind of thing where you could while away an afternoon with a friend, just like, hey, let's go play the first 2 levels of Diablo.
I have friends when they didn't have they just had a very minimal computer when the first Diablo came out, and that was ported over to the PlayStation.
Yeah.
And it was a very truncated version of...
It was really rough.
Yeah, but they loved it.
Yeah.
And I believe that had same-screen co-op as well.
Did it?
I
don't remember that.
Maybe, I don't know, it's been 15 years.
Yeah. So Diablo 3,
it was Diablo 3. It looks good. I mean, and if you guys don't have a computer that's able to do it, then I think you're going to like this a lot if you're a Diablo fan.
Sure. So. Especially, I think that there's a lot of people who are big fans of Diablo 1 and 2 who had some problems with Diablo 3.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that, like, if you're a console player who's never had the chance to check out Diablo, Diablo 3 is not a bad place to start. It's got a lot of character.
You're gonna like it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. It's fun. Okay, well, why don't you go a little further, because I don't have as many things as you do this
I went
time.
up to the Summer of Arcade. It was a pretty crowded little mini area.
Isn't that happening in like a month?
Yeah, I think it actually starts like in June, if I'm not mistaken. But that was the funny thing, because at one point I was playing one of the games and I was like, hey, yeah, this is Summer of Arcade, because they had the host in there and one of the developers, and he, as I'm playing, and I said, oh, when does this come out? And he said, oh, it comes out this summer. I'm like, no shit, really?
Did you just like stare at him and say, go fuck
Yeah, I
yourself?
was just like, yeah, okay.
Let me ask you this question. Did you ask him why last year's Summer of Arcade sucked so fucking hard?
I almost did, but I almost did. I almost said, yeah, last year's Summer of Arcade was lame. It was the worst since they started that. I seriously almost said that.
Yeah.
And then he said, yeah, last year we did Tony Hawk. And I was like, oh, yeah, I played that. Yeah. I just want to go. I asked Jeff a lot of horrible questions on that one. But yeah, I started off with Charlie Murder.
What is Charlie Murder?
It was all
Is it a relative of yours?
Yes.
Okay.
It was all drawn, like really crude drawings, kind of like Castle Crashers or Battle Block, that kind of thing, kind of simplistic stuff. But it was metal. You start off. I mean, the first level, or at least the first level that I played, it was it could have very well been set to start that way for demonstration purposes. But you're this it's made by Ska Studios, and it was this guy who. You're this guy with his like green hair in his face, and he's got this underbite. It looks kind of like the Gorillaz.
Okay.
For the band art. And you start off and you're in hell and you're punching demons, and then you all of a sudden start floating up out of hell, and you see yourself in the street getting CPR. And there's zombies everywhere, and this cop gives you CPR, and you jump up and you start kicking zombie ass. And it's ridiculous.
Okay.
It's just ridiculous.
What kind of game is it? It's like, it looks like a Castle Crashers, like side-scrolling.
It's a little side-scrolling brawler.
Oh, okay.
You just run along, punching zombies, picking stuff up, getting special moves, stuff like that. It was fun. It's very much an Summer of Arcade type game.
Did you want to buy it? Did it seem like the sort of thing that would be worth buying?
There's...
I know I'm asking for a snap judgment here, but I'm just saying... First impression, sure. I mean, they were being a little sketchy on what it was going to cost. They were saying it's going to be competitive, so $10 or $15. Yeah, maybe
$10,
20.
Yeah.
I mean, State of Decay was 20. And Summer of Arcade.
If this is 20. No.
Yeah.
I mean, this seemed kind of fun and very stylized. I mean, it's all about just ridiculous. Miscreants fighting monsters and demons.
Looks
and
like
Danzig.
Scott Pilgrim meets like Foamy the Squirrel or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was fun. Wasn't bad. And then I moved over to the next one, and that was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows.
Okay.
This is a damn good looking game.
Is it a tie-in to the movie?
Oh, I don't know.
With the Megan Butts or whatever?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But yeah, you start off.
Was it just a bunch of guys in terrible motion capture suits walking around? Was that all it was?
Yeah.
They fight Paul Giamatti at some point?
No, this it actually looked really good as far as the graphics. I mean, the details on the turtles was amazing. And
what the fuck? That looks so weird.
I know. They look all slender and everything.
Yeah, they look too anatomically correct. It's like they got turtle junk. That's gross. Ew. Yuck.
I'll get to that part. No.
Okay.
But it's kind of creepy how realistic they look. But it's got these comic book panel cut scenes. It's a brawler.
Okay.
And it's not like Turtles in Time. You go in different directions. It's like, okay, now you have to head, along the Y-axis, that kind of thing.
So it's like a third-person...
Or the Z-axis or whatever.
Third-person action game type of thing?
Yeah. But at any point, you can switch on your D-pad to any four of the Turtles.
Okay.
And they all have their different styles, of course, and their different special moves. And there's, the dodge and the special moves and blocking and the regular attack and the kicks. And there's a ton of upgrade mechanics on this.
Do what now? What?
Yep.
I'm sorry, what?
Yep. I said it.
I was looking this game up.
Ton of upgrade mechanics.
Okay.
On just everything.
Really?
Yeah. Like, okay, now you're going to upgrade your kicking ability, and now you're going to upgrade your weapons and your special moves and all that.
Can you get laser nunchucks?
That's a damn good idea.
Yeah.
Michelangelo.
Okay.
But yeah, cool thing is, you're fighting these guys, and it's like, all right, I'm going to be Donatello now.
Right.
And you just press left, and you're Donatello. So yeah, it was fun. It was a little brawler. I liked it. And I'll be buying this one. And yeah, of course, it's got multiplayer.
Are you a Turtles fan, Jason?
I'm not as big of a Turtles fan as a lot of Turtles fans.
Right.
I read the original
Eastman and Laird
stuff.
Yeah.
Watched a few of the cartoons. Watched like the first 2 movies. Saw the first movie twice in the theater.
Really?
Yeah. But I like the Turtles. I'm not a huge fan, but I liked them.
Okay.
But yeah, and you skip around to a couple of levels. It's well rendered. The scenery's cool looking, and it's got 4-player online co-op.
Always a good thing.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty groovy.
And then I believe it has split screen for 2-player local.
Let me ask you a question. When you said you can switch between the Turtles at the press of a button, when you're not controlling the other 3, are they? If there's not somebody playing them, are they with you on the screen? Okay.
Yeah, they're all with you doing their own thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're computer controlled when there's not another person.
Yes.
There. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And it's Red Fly. I don't think I've ever heard of them before.
They're the ones that did Tony Hawk, the Tony Hawk conversion.
Right. Yes, that's right. You said that.
Yeah.
Whew, man. All right. Well, I tell you what. I'm gonna go ahead and switch gears to something that's also very dense and complicated before we can finish out with kind of the more lighthearted stuff, and that is Lightning Returns Final Fantasy 13, which should be called Final Fantasy 13-3 Lightning Returns.
Oh God.
Part 6.
Is my nose bleeding?
The second.
Do I have a nosebleed?
Not yet.
I think those are like power words to give me a headache.
So, for anybody that's been keeping track of the Final Fantasy 13 series, at the end of Final Fantasy 13, apparently Lightning went to Valhalla or something, and then in Final Fantasy 13-2, it's like you want to get her back from the grave or something, and in Final Fantasy 13-3, apparently, or this Lightning Returns, apparently takes place like 500 years after Final Fantasy 13-2. But most of the characters from Final Fantasy 13 are still bopping around doing their thing.
I want to see one of those big internet flowcharts about all of the Final Fantasy games, the characters and the storylines and stuff like that.
Oh my God. All right. So here's
you would need like Microsoft Visio to make it happen.
I think so. But here is the good news. Well, here's the semi-good news for Final Fantasy people who do not like Final Fantasy 13. It looks like they have changed the battle mechanics from Final Fantasy 13. All right, listen, you guys, it's been a while, and in this demo that the people were playing, I didn't get a chance to put my hands on it directly because there was too long of a line. I had to go see like 4 other games. But I did watch somebody play it, and I read all the tutorials over their shoulder. You play
out loud in their ear.
Yes, in the voice of Tim Curry in the movie It. So... real soft though. But no, in this demo, you were playing only as Lightning. So you didn't have a party of people. You're playing as one character. And the way that it worked was you still had kind of this active battle system a little bit from Final Fantasy 13, but what you had is this giant complicated bar at the bottom of the screen. One part of it was your health, and on the right-hand side, you had the 4 buttons that were on the PlayStation controller. And each one of those buttons coincided to a different type of attack. And then you had at the top this bar that represented the amount of actions that you can take. And what you did was in real time, you would hit the buttons to do like punch or throw a grenade or do whatever nonsense. And as you did those actions, it would tick off chunks of that active time bar until if there was none left.
Okay.
And then it would slowly recharge. But once it got all the way done, you could hit the left and the right shoulder buttons to switch to different like stances. And they were like, it was a lot like Final Fantasy X2 where it was a different costume for Lightning. Like one of them was kind of like a lighter wizard, one of them was a battler, and one of them was like a darker wizard. And they weren't labeled in the white mage, black mage way of Final Fantasy. So what you would do is you would run out one active time bar, and then you would switch over to another art that had a whole separate active time bar, and then start running through attacks on that one. But the thing was that it was always like, hit a button and she directly does an attack. Whereas in Final Fantasy 13, it's like you would queue up attacks, and then they would run down, and then you would queue up more attacks, and they would run down. So this is a change to that system where it's a more direct input on the battle system. It still had a lot of the battle of like, you see the enemies wandering around in the environment, you run up and you hit them, and if you hit them in the back, you get a 10% bonus. I did notice, and I can't entirely remember because these Final Fantasy games sometimes blur for me as well, but it seemed like if you lose health in a battle, when you are done with that battle, you don't get all your health back, which I believe was a thing that happened in Final Fantasy 13, Final Fantasy 13-2. The world seems to be like, when I was looking at the game, there was a timer that said like 7 days, and then it had a clock that was counting up. And I was hearing in the trailers for Final Fantasy Lightning Returns in the background on that giant fucking square screen that like she's shown back up 7 days before the end of the world. And there's a prophecy that a demon will show up 7 days before the world is about to end, and then a great hero will come and destroy them. And the assumption, I believe, in the universe is that Lightning is that demon, and that everybody's kind of trying to get rid of her. But there's some other nefarious shit going down. There's somebody in there that looks like her sister, but she's an evil version. I don't even know. All I'm going to say is this. Like, if you're in on the Final Fantasy 13 series still at this point, you probably owe it to yourself to check this one out because it looks like it's doing some crazy Square
I thought you were going to
craziness.
say you probably owe it to yourself to check into a home.
Into a mental asylum.
Yeah.
It would probably be in your best interest to get on Thorazine as soon as humanly possible. But no, I mean, like, it looks gorgeous, just like Final Fantasy 13 and 13-2 did. It had some similar enemy types. There was a boss where they had reintroduced a stagger mechanic, and there's a thing where you can slow down time except for yourself. There's a lot of interesting little mechanics in there going on. I personally really liked Final Fantasy 13-2 because I felt like they addressed a lot of the problems from 13. But if you have been checked out of this series since the beginning, since Final Fantasy 13, then you probably, like I said, just want to give this one a skip because it looks like it's more of the same Final Fantasy craziness that you probably are like, ugh, fuck that by now. So that's all I have to say about that.
Okay.
Let's see. Why don't you roll, because the last four that I have are
Okay.
Those are real interesting ones. So,
well, this one was really interesting. This was a much smaller game called Rain, and I think there was something on one of the. God, what was this on? Was it the? Oh, it was
Sony.
It was the PS4.
Yeah,
it was on the Sony thing. This was. It seemed like it was in like France in the 1920s or something like that. It had like, French accordion music playing. It's all very dark and wet and gloomy. And you play this kid who has got, I'm fuzzy on this because I kind of was only halfway paying attention to the opening credits because I had to get to a different appointment. But you play a little boy who has like gotten a fever and either become separated from his body or died.
Wait, which one of those actually happens? Death. That's right.
Yeah, let's go.
Let's go with death.
Let's go with death.
Yeah.
You're walking around and it's raining all over the city, and you're trying to follow. You're this little ghost kid. Mm-hmm. You're trying to follow this little ghost girl who's running away, and you keep trying to catch up to her. But there are monsters. There are these hooved little dog, quadruped-like things, and then some other creatures that are chasing you. But they can only see you when you're in the rain, and so you have to go from like awning to awning or, roof to roof, like underneath the edges and so forth, to keep the rain from pouring on you. And sometimes when those creatures will follow you into the area where it's not raining, and you can't see them either. Because they're little ghost creatures as well. So you have to be really still. And so you have lots of puzzles like, okay, I have to climb over them, and go ledge to ledge while they're nipping at your heels, trying to jump up and get you.
Was this all 2D?
No, it was 3D.
It's 3D? Okay.
Yeah. But it had a lot of fixed camera angle perspectives.
Okay.
So you would run through one area and then you would run through the differently positioned area that it was connected to, So, but you would come up with puzzles that were like, there would be one of the monsters blocking the way you had to go.
Okay.
And
did it say anything about where these monsters came from?
No.
Okay.
No. Not in the part that I saw anyway. But you would be able to you would have to make a noise to get its attention, and it would come in your direction. You'd have to make that noise and then hide. So you jump in a puddle of water. It makes a big splash, and the creature comes out sniffing for you. And while it's sniffing around the puddle, then you sneak past it. It was a beautiful game. It was atmospheric.
This is a PSN game, right?
I believe so, yes. Okay. And, it was atmospheric. It was really cool, and it had, the opening part anyway, had a lot of text narration, and the sound of rain and everything. But whenever you would die, and you could take falling damage as well. But every time you would die, it would say, "You've been swallowed by the darkness." And those things couldn't hurt you. If they caught you, you were dead.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
Wow.
So I'm really looking forward to this one. It was one of the standouts for me.
Okay. Cool. Well, actually, you know what? That dovetails nicely into something that I saw over at the Square Enix booth, which I just didn't come up in any of the press conferences. And it's interesting because this is one of the original IPs that I found. Did you even see the booth for this?
I did. I didn't play it, but I
Murdered Soul Suspect, and that's SOUL. And there's a trailer that was there, and essentially the conceit of this game is that you play as a cop who, like a detective who has been killed, and it's in Salem, Massachusetts, and you're a ghost.
Okay.
And you have you can see the character has these 6 orange dots on the right hand side of his body, and that's like where the killer shot you in the back with your own gun and then left you to die in the street. So the gameplay demo that I saw for this opened up in the street where you had died, and you basically had to figure out you're trying to figure out who killed you, and all the while you're a ghost and you can't interact with anything. That you can interact with the living, but you can't pick anything up or do anything.
Sure.
So there was a lot of interesting stuff.
Do you have to go find Whoopi Goldberg?
Yes.
Awesome.
You have to put your hands on Demi Moore with Patrick Swayze. No, I tell you what, one of the weirdest things about this was that they said, okay, there was a part I'll come back to the beginning part. There's a part in the demo where you have to go into this building. And they said that you can't go into buildings unless somebody opens a door for you, because all of the buildings in Salem, Massachusetts older buildings were consecrated at one point in time.
Okay.
So you can't just waltz in. But once you're inside of the building,
it's like you at a playground.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I just go, well, this is the weirdest thing. I've never seen a game like this before. It's you go into this apartment building, right? You're on the bottom floor. You can go through all the walls. You can just walk through all the walls. There's no walls or doors to stop you.
Once you get in.
Once you get in,
okay.
Yes. So most of the game is less about traversal and more about trying to put these mysteries together. And they have a bunch of weird stuff. When you're out on the street before you go into the house, this guy is, you can trigger memories. You can look at your body and it'll bring up a series of words all over the screen, and there'll be 2 of them that you need to pick. So you'll look at
it's a crossword puzzle.
Well, you'll pick murdered and then gun, and then those 2 will be the ones that you need, and they'll unlock a memory. Now, the guy that was doing the demo, or it was a pre-recorded demo, the pre-recorded demo guy never fucked it up, so I couldn't see what happens if you pick the wrong words. But it seems like a lot of the gameplay is based on trying to put these kind of pick out the right keywords for a situation that unlocks a memory that gives you more clues. And what you're trying to do in any given level to solve a mystery is you're trying to unlock enough memories so that you can take those memories and put them in order and then create a narrative to get your memory of what actually happened here. In this one, you started out on the street and there's these cops, and you can jump into the cops. You can possess one of them. And when you're in there, you can listen to their conversation. They're talking about some shady shit that went down. And then there's a guy who's filling out a police report, and you can jump into him, and you can look through his eyes at the police report and look at what he's writing and mark things that are of interest to you. And there's this woman who's giving testimony to the cops about what she saw when you got thrown out of this window and shot in the middle of the street, because apparently everybody else was just fuck it, there's TV on. And with her, she's too wound up to tell the cop what he needs to know, so you have to read her mind, and you can calm her down and string her thoughts together to figure out what she's actually trying to say. And then you go into this building, and there's sub-quests. You find this woman in the building who is a side quest who's behind a radiator, and she's like, I'm sorry, I'm looking for my body. Can you find my body? I think it has something to do with those people over there. And so you go to these people, and you jump into them, and you listen to their memories, and they're like, I can't believe we killed that girl last night. And the other person's like, God, we drove all the way out to fucking Beggar's Canyon to bury her body or whatever,
Amongst the womp rats.
Exactly. And then you go back to her and you tell her, hey, your body's over in the quarry. And she's like, okay. So when you do all this stuff, you get these upgrade points, and I don't know jack shit about what you do with them. It seems like it's got a kind of Southern Gothic mystery style to it, which I really like. When you go out and you walk around in the city of Salem, there's ghosts on the street that you could just talk to everywhere. There's buildings or things that you can interact with in the spirit world that look like they're there because there was some kind of psychic trauma that made an impact of them there. And it was a really interesting thing. It reminded me actually quite a bit of a game that I mentioned in the first part, Ghost Trick, which was made by the Phoenix Wright people, where you were ghosting, you had to make things happen in the world. But it seems a lot more straightforward. There's also antagonistic enemies in the game. There's these demons that will try to chase you, and they showed the only way to get around them in the beginning is you have to sneak up on them and you possess them and make them explode. And you can either just try to get around them when they're going in the opposite direction, or you can possess a human and they can't see you in the humans.
Okay.
And then you can jump out of the human into them and blow them up. They were very simple enemies that didn't do a whole hell of a lot. This was another one of those either alpha or pre-alpha games. So they had just set up a very, very small vertical slice. It's the sort of thing that if it's like LA Noire and what they showed is all you do for the entire game, that's dull. But if they use this in creative ways to create puzzles that you have to figure out, I'm a sucker for a good mystery.
Yeah.
And that seems like a pretty cool mystery.
Yeah. That sounds like a cool concept.
Yeah. I mean, it seems pretty cool. It's also not coming out until 2014. It's a PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 game, and it looks like an upper generation one of those games.
Yeah.
It's fine looking. It's just not blowing the socks off.
Right.
So,
okay.
Why don't you go next?
The next one was it was something that I knew Jeff was looking for, so I did it so he wouldn't be able to take joy from it.
Bastard.
It was over in the Microsoft section. It was the trigger demo for the Xbox One. Now, you guys may know that the Xbox controller for the Xbox One now has the force feedback, basically.
Rumble.
In the triggers.
Do you have to put one rumble pack in each trigger?
You do. You have to load it up.
Okay, good.
And it actually uses N64 rumble packs.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
It's really clumsy, but but it had different things, and it was hosted. There was a guy going, okay, here's what this is for, and you would go through each of the things that they had prepared specifically for E3, and it was stuff like, okay, and it would show an outline of a body and a heart beating in it. It's like, okay, you can feel the heartbeat in there. And wouldn't it be cool if you're playing some war game and you've got a sniper and then all of a sudden you can feel your heart beating in the trigger because you're zoomed in on somebody. You know,
that doesn't sound interesting.
Right. And then there was one where it was like a helicopter. You'd feel the helicopter take off. And
is this at both triggers or just one? Or
both triggers.
Okay.
Yeah. But it is independent motors, of course.
Right.
So they can do one or the other. And then there was I'm gonna miss one, I'm sure, but there was also like a car, and you could feel the key turn when you turn the engine on and stuff like that.
Interesting.
It added a little bit more delicacy and refinement to the rumble technology.
Okay.
There was another thing that was like car wheels, and then when they slammed on the brakes, you could feel the anti-lock brakes clicking.
Oh, okay.
And then there was, of course, a chain gun, like a minigun.
Okay.
And you could just keep firing that. So it was simple, but it was basically just rumbling in the triggers.
Okay.
There wasn't anything terribly novel to it, but he stressed, and this is absolutely correct, that it will be, of course, up to the developer as to how they use it.
Right.
Some people may be able to use this to good effect, but it is really just kind of an extra little, I don't know, it's just icing, so not much to it really.
Let me ask you, did you walk by like the, I think this shit's kind of ridiculous personally, but like over at the Xbox One, they have this giant glass case that has the Xbox One in it, so you can take pictures of it.
Yeah.
Did you look at the actual console?
No, I just glanced at it.
Yeah.
I'm like, whatever, I don't care.
It's pretty big, man.
It is big.
It's pretty big.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that people have already said that, so it's kind of self-evident, but I think it's pretty big.
Yeah, they had those new slim 360s everywhere.
Well, yes, that's true.
Those look pretty good.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that in 8 years, the Xbox One will be nice and slim?
Yeah, so just wait a bit. Just wait, and it'll be...
You may not want to buy it
cumbersome.
day one.
Right.
Maybe wait for
7 or 8 years.
Week 8.
Yeah. And then after that, I checked out something that I traditionally have not been a big fan of.
Yeah.
Mostly because I haven't played it much.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I think that if you got into it, you would probably be a fan.
Because I tried playing, talking about Dead Rising 3.
Yeah.
I tried playing Dead Rising 1. It didn't do it for me. This was a long time ago when it, because it was one of the, close to the launch games of the 360.
Dead Rising is weird.
Yeah, it was very strange.
Because like the best way to play Dead Rising is to it's kind of counterintuitive because you get to you level up, and then when you restart the game, you keep your level. So the best way to learn how to play Dead Rising is to start playing it and then fail miserably, and then start the game over again.
Right. Yeah, I think part of that got me, and then I found the controls again several years ago to be very clumsy. So I never gave any of the expansions or Dead Rising 2 a shot. Dead Rising 3. This is a whole new ball game.
Yeah.
It's, different character. It's a guy named, I think, Nick Ramos, who is, like, we mentioned this the other day. He's a grease monkey, works in a garage.
Sure.
And, it's, the game is really good looking.
Okay.
Violent as shit.
Yeah.
And, the graphics are just light years beyond what we've seen in like Dead Rising 2.
Okay.
It's a gorgeous game, and it can handle, and they emphasize this, of course, it can handle so many zombies on the screen. Because at one point you come around this corner. I didn't get to play it. This was a controlled demonstration in the theater. But you come around this corner, and I mean, my jaw dropped. I was like, holy fuck, that's a lot of zombies.
Yeah.
I mean, just more than I've ever seen on screen at one time in a video game.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
By far.
Like, comparable to how many, like, can you give me a movie equivalent of zombies?
Yeah, comparable to, remember when they're on the roof in Dawn of the Dead, the remake?
Yeah.
Like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Like, more, like, like, how about,
I mean, they were just shoulder to shoulder on the street.
the number of zombies outside of the Winchester in Shaun of the Dead?
Yeah.
Like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it was just
And
everywhere.
I'm talking about at night when they're playing Queen and they're all trying to get it, not when there's like 5 of them out there.
Oh, yeah, maybe more.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, it was just thick.
Okay.
But you come around the corner and you'll see that sometimes, and it was just staggering how many there were. But then you hop in a car and just start plowing through them, and it's got the quirky, it brings the book mechanic back where you can buff yourself by whatever books you're carrying with you.
Okay.
And it's got the mechanic where you combine weapons. Like in this one, they combined a sledgehammer and a concrete saw.
Yes.
And so they're hitting people with a sledgehammer.
That one?
Yeah,
that was actually the one we saw in the E3 the stage demo they did.
Exactly.
Was this the same as the stage demo?
No.
No? Okay.
No, they were playing as we were watching it.
Oh, okay. But was it in the same area?
Well, that's the thing, is that it's in the city. It's Los Perdidos or something like that. And it's a huge fucking city.
Okay.
With no load times or anything like that.
Nice.
It's just this massive city. And so they were kind of going all over the place with cars and what have you, and, barricades and all that. And you have the ability, let me get back to the concrete saw sledgehammer thing.
Okay.
It's kicking ass with the sledgehammer, cutting people in half with the saw, and it just bloody mess, body parts everywhere. And it was, realistic-ish,
Like just realistic enough to be fun without being obtrusive.
Yeah. And at one point he threw the concrete saw at someone and it just split him in half.
Nice.
It was great.
Very nice.
Yeah, so it totally sold me on this game. I was very excited about it.
What did you see?
And you get to call down airstrikes.
Okay,
but I don't know how that works. They were unclear on that.
Let me ask you, what did you see that was not in the stage show? Did you see much of anything? Or
it was they reiterated how you combine the weapons.
Okay,
which they really didn't go into.
You don't have to have a bench for, right?
No, I don't believe so.
Yeah,
but you can find blueprints in lots of places. There are safe houses.
Okay.
That are marked.
Okay.
Sometimes you have to clean those out, but once you clean them out, you're safe in there.
Is there a kid who you have to inject with Zombrex all the time?
Not that I saw. No.
Oh, thank God, because fuck that guy's little girl. Jesus.
Yeah, I didn't see anything like that. There was shit like that. They bring all the costumes back that kind of emphasize the sense of fun that the previous one had, because at one point you put on, like, there's a hazmat suit.
Okay.
And they said, this is definitely an intentional nod to Breaking Bad.
To Breaking Bad.
Yeah. But at one point you put like a shark costume on.
Nice.
Running around with that. So it's still got a little bit of that goofiness there.
Did you get any indication as to if vehicles like the car are prevalent in the game?
Oh, yeah.
They're all over the place?
Yeah, they're all over the place.
Excellent.
And yeah, you go around because the city is massive.
Yeah.
That's something that really wasn't emphasized in the presentation the other day.
Like the size of LA?
It's big. I don't know what it compares to. They didn't give us any basis of comparison really, but it was sprawling. And at one point he turns around and looks back, and you can see he's like, yeah, see, there's all that stuff you can go to. That's it was like blurry off in the distance.
Did they give you any indications to what the plot of the game is?
Not really. It just seemed like zombie apocalypse while you were working. Get the hell out.
Except, maybe have fun and kill a whole bunch of zombies on the way type of thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
pretty much. They didn't go into that, but I'm sold. It looked badass.
So you're ready to start your Dead Rising career with Dead Rising 3? Did they talk at all about the leveling system or XP or anything like that?
Yes, but I don't really remember.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I think they called them, I don't know. I saw so many leveling things today. I'm not even going to say.
I know sometimes it gets a little.
I was about to say it, but I'm like, no, wait, that was from something else.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Well, let's see.
Can you do another one?
Yeah. Well, no, I tell you what. I'll do one. We'll go back and forth, and then when we get down to the end, you can just do all of yours in a row.
Okay.
So after this, and I got to tell you guys, I just want to, I want to tell you guys that a lot of these things this year are hands-off demos.
Yeah. There's a disappointing amount.
Yeah. I mean, well, there's a lot of stuff that you can get hands-on with, but most of the stuff that, like, if you were to see those stage shows and then I was to ask you, listener, whoever you are, what game would you like to get your hands on more than anything? Your answer would probably be unavailable to get your hands on.
And all the stuff that was hands-on, or a lot of it, was about to be available anyway.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, they had a lot of things for The Last of Us.
Yeah,
there was
so many kiosks for The Last of Us.
I still couldn't get to it because they were like, they were like 5 or 6 deep every time I went.
There's a demo out already for The Last of
really?
Us. Well, it was if you bought God of War Ascension or whatever.
Yeah. And then there were a couple of kiosks for Deadpool, which I really wanted to play, but that comes out like next week.
Right. I mean, it's one of those things where we're trying to get to stuff, but like, I'm just going to say this right now. We're probably not going to get to see either Watch Dogs or Stick of Truth because they're both like sit down in an auditorium and watch this presentation where somebody else plays the game.
Yep.
And like, here's the thing. I'd love to do that for you guys if we had an infinite amount of time, but I'd rather play a game that we haven't played than sit there and watch a game.
The wait for some of these to just sit down and watch a controlled demo
so long
can be hours. Like
so
with
long.
my horrible experience with Titanfall.
You didn't have to do that.
I know, but I thought, this is my first day, and I thought, oh, that's how it goes.
Yeah.
I'm going to wait in line for 2.5 hours, and fuck E3. That's what I was thinking.
We'll come back to that later on. All right. Well, anyway, when I was over at the Square Enix booth, it's funny because I scheduled a booth tour over there, and they gave me a little sticker that I put on my badge that said like Square Enix on it. That was my like VIP thing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. So I go over to Murdered Soul Sacrifice, and basically I get to bypass the line of Joe Schmoes and get in the press line that lets you in first, and then they brought in. This happens a lot at E3 where they bring in the press who have scheduled or have a VIP badge in first, and then they bring in like a much smaller number of just people waiting in the general admission line. Then I go over to Thief, and I'm like, hey, I'd like to see Thief. And they're like, yeah, the line is right over there. And I'm like, oh, I got the sticker on my badge. And the lady literally was like, that doesn't really mean fuck all over here. And I was like, okay. And she was like, yeah, but the line goes.
And then she spat on you and said, you're a lower caste.
She said, though, that
don't touch me.
That most of the time they had a line that was like 3 or 4 little bank things deep.
Yeah.
3 or 4 turns deep. And she said, we usually get everybody in there, and we do one every 30 minutes. So I waited there. I got in right at the end of the line, right as they open up the doors. Everybody went in. I was literally the first person in line for the next demo because the guy in front of me went, I'll stand in the back. Can you get one more in? And they were like, all right, you go in there. And then they looked at me and I was like, what if I say I'll stand at the back? And they were like, I'm sorry, dude. So I sat down for 30 minutes, which, sitting down at E3 is kind of a trap, man. You don't really want to do that because then you got to stand back up again.
Yeah. And as you stand up, you feel everything creaking.
You're like, oh God, I'm an old man.
Yeah.
So I got to see that new Thief game, and I'll tell you guys a few things about this. It is not a prequel. It is not a sequel. It is basically a reimagining of the original Thief.
Okay.
It's being made by Eidos Montreal, I believe, who is the guys who made
Deus Ex?
Deus Ex Human Revolution.
Yeah.
And it looks a lot like Deus Ex Human Revolution. Eidos Montreal. And you've got here's the thing. I've never really got into the Thief series.
Okay.
I always wanted to.
I played the first two. Been a long time.
A lot of people really fond memories of the Thief series.
Well, they were the first to do what they did, and that was, the first person sneaker.
Yeah. So you still control Garrett, and one of the most interesting things I found about this was that Garrett has a health bar, and he has a focus bar, which you can use the focus bar to like they have a mini game for unlocking doors, like you do in a game like Thief, which you can, if you are willing to expend focus, you can do it way faster. Sure. So like if there's guys that are coming to where you are, you might want to do that. Or like you have to hold down a button and this little bar fills up to sneak a bag off of somebody to steal whatever they have. If you hold on the focus button and do that, it turns it into an instant thing. And you can only get focus back through puppies.
What?
Yes. Like you pick up puppies and that's how you eat them to get your focus back.
You eat the puppies?
Not puppies. Poppies.
I thought you said puppies, and I'm like, wait. I was like, puppies? Oh, okay, that's oddly cute. And you said, then you eat them. I'm like, what the fuck, Thief?
He carries around a little steampunk grinder. You make sausage real fast.
Poppies.
Right
on.
Yes. So in this demo, it was very similar to what they showed on stage, except it was a guy who was actually controlling it. And in a stealth game like this, that means that there's bound to be some fucking up and fucking around.
Oh, yeah.
He did his best sneaking, and he most of the time got through it. One of the really cool things that I thought that this game did was it's all first person, and it does this really interesting thing. You may have remembered it from the stage demo, where like when you're up against like a wall and you're at one side, you can see Garrett's hands come up like he's looking around it.
Yeah.
I don't think it does anything, but it's just a nice little
nice
thing.
Touch.
One of the things that I really like though is he has a move that he does where you, I think they call it the swoop, where you're walking around and like say there's light, there's like you. I'm sorry, I need to stop making hand gestures because you guys can't see my hands. It's like you and then a street light, and then the other side there's darkness and there's a guard in between, and you start moving into the light, and then you hit this button and you see the camera do this little like really fast like dip down slide that will let you like dip through lights to get other places or get out of the way of guards quickly or things like that. Very cool. You get the water arrows. There was a guard that was standing in a pool of oil that they said you could totally set it on fire. Saw the rope arrows, like just from Thief. There was a lot of like the mission they had. There was a lot of assists that were turned on. Like when there was a point where he accidentally rumbled the guards a little bit, and he got out of the way before they came looking for him, and they had like these red icons over their heads showing you that they were alerted to your presence. He said, there's a huge screen where you can turn all this stuff off. You can turn off HUD elements. You can turn off the focus meter entirely, so you have to play the game like hardcore style.
Whoa.
For people who are looking for a very much like OG Thief experience, you can cut this stuff off. He went through this level and he was stealing a necklace, and after he stole this necklace, you had to escape. So it's like the first part was stealing and the second part was escaping. He was trying to get over this bridge back into the part of town where the sneaky town or whatever. I don't know what the fuck was going on there. But the bridge was on fire. And so it became very much this like kind of the chateau from Uncharted, but in a first person perspective. You got stuff that's catching on fire. You could choose to try to steal stuff, even though shit is catching on fire. And when he got to the end of the level, it was like he got like 28 of the treasures from the map out of like 114 or something like that. And he did like one kill and one knockout. But it looks like the sort of game that's very much like Deus Ex in that it gives you the tools to play how you want to play. So you could play it by never touching a single guard and just wandering around and like never alerting anybody. Or, well, I don't really think you can go in guns blazing. It just doesn't look like you have enough ammo, and that Garrett isn't the sort of character that would feasibly be able to take on numerous guards.
Right.
So there's no way to really do that. But it looked good. It sounded good. It seemed like it was fantastic. It's coming out for the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. And it was really reminiscent, I think, of a lot of things we're starting to see with the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, where it's like they kind of look like this generation games, except they're a little bit higher resolution, and they run at a really nice frame rate, and there's no slowdown or any kind of like texture cheating. There were a lot of like particle effects in this that were really nice. So I'm looking forward to it because I'm a fan of sneaking games, and I never got a chance to get into Thief. And it's like, you guys have given me a new start, a new lease on Thief, essentially.
I'm curious to see how they pull it off and, you know, how faithful it is. Because I played the first two, again, a long time ago when they were originally released, and really liked them. They were very novel at the time, and for some reason the series just kind of derailed for a long time.
Was there much like traversal in there? Because there's a lot of like like in this one, there's a lot of like climbing up on top of things like stone
I seem to remember that
pillars and stuff.
Again, it's been 15 years.
And they had one thing where they turned off a water feature, like a fountain, so that he could climb up that area.
I think so.
Like alternate paths and stuff.
A lot of it was taking out lights and stuff like that. That was a ton of it. One of the thieves kind of derailed because they put zombies in there.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, what? This is a bad joke, or are you
no.
For serious, bro?
I'm serious. Yeah, they put. I think it was Thief 2. No.
Was it the third one?
It was Thief 1. No, I didn't even play the third one. I think it was Thief 1, and they had this zombie thing, and it just totally just fucked up the whole game because it just became Battle of these Zombies. And with your sword, and it was.
That sounds stupid.
It was. Yeah, it was a horrible mistake, and I'm pretty sure they fixed it in Thief 2. I'm getting all of the details mixed up, but yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, you know what? We're almost at an hour, so I want you to go through the next one on your list, and then we'll take a quick break and come back.
Okay.
Because this is a pretty big one.
Yeah. The next one, again, this wasn't hands-on. I had to make an appointment to go in there, and it was Call of Duty Ghosts. And I didn't realize what the story was about this, and I still don't know completely, but there's been some cataclysmic event that just completely, it was like projectiles heading towards the United States.
Like comets, like in the Deep Impact movie with Morgan Freeman?
It could be, because there was this giant crater that we see in the gameplay, but it was either like a meteor, or it could have been missiles or something like that. But and the country is completely wrecked. And you and your brother and your service dog, based on a Navy SEAL service dog, which you see in the the early trailers.
Now, is this like a disabled person service dog that then gets drafted into the special ops military?
No, I think this is like they have like Navy SEAL training. I know it sounds ridiculous, but
I know all about that.
It had like a camera and an earpiece and stuff like that.
So it was a professional dog.
Yeah.
Okay, but you said there were no doggles.
There were no goggles. No, the dog was not wearing goggles. He didn't have
doggles. Man,
he didn't have a scarf. He wasn't dressed up like a hot dog, which would have been awesome.
Dogs wearing clothes is ridiculous. It's one of my pet peeves. Shut up, Jason.
But I couldn't tell who it was that we were up against, but it was a bunch of guys in hazmat suits or radiation suits, and they seemed to be speaking like Spanish or Portuguese. Yeah,
dirty Portuguese nuking us.
Yeah,
so, Wolverines.
But at points you control the dog,
really,
much like you control like the RC car. But I think it's in controlled sequences.
Can you pee on stuff?
No, I wish you could mark stuff.
Okay,
or hump things.
Yeah,
I don't think you can do either.
Okay,
but the dog, sneaking up through the grass and then pouncing on somebody and ripping their fucking throat out. Big German Shepherd. But yeah, it plays in spite of the setting, which is a very different setting for a Call of Duty game, with the events and everything. But is it
just the kind of wrecked nature?
What we played or what we watched them play was this basically a post-apocalyptic San Diego.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, it was a smoking fucking crater. And here's the thing that makes me think it was a geological event, because there kept being little tremors, like earthquakes.
Or was it the locust?
It could have been the locust.
Was it the Lambent? Yeah. Would they ever talk about Lambent?
It was cover the E-hole.
Fucking E-holes.
Emergence Day, yeah.
That was so E-holes.
Yeah. But yeah, you go and you taking those guys out, and and that plays very much like Call of Duty, right? Mm-hmm. And then the second part,
L1R1, L1R1.
Well, that they weren't explicit about that, but I mean that I don't know why they would change it, And there was a lot of talking into the radios, like, okay, here they go. All right, you're up. Take the one on the left. That kind of thing,
No, was it the developers doing that dumb thing where they pretend like they're special forces guys, or was it actually like in-game footage?
Oh, no, that was the in-game audio.
Oh, okay.
I would have had to just walk out laughing.
Have you not seen that yet?
No.
You might see it tomorrow.
Oh, boy.
You might see it there's a game where you might be able to look at tomorrow that you're probably going to see a bunch of developers pretending like they're special forces dudes. Okay.
The second part was an underwater sequence.
Okay.
And it was, it was you and your brother. You meet up with the ghosts at some point, but
and they're like special forces, rogue special forces guys.
Yeah, basically
trying to take back America from the dirty Portuguese or wherever they are.
Pretty much.
Okay.
But you're in this underwater thing trying to get to this missile platform or something like that out in the ocean, and you end up swimming through these just beautiful aquatic areas and then at the end, the shit just starts falling apart, and your air hose gets severed, and you get pinned under some stuff underwater.
Oh, noes!
Yeah, and so it was really intense. It had a lot of those good action set pieces, and it was gorgeous.
Now, was it on Xbox One, PS4?
It was either Xbox One or PS4, but I don't remember which one.
Okay,
and they didn't make it clear.
Okay. Did they use the Kinect Smart Glass?
No,
that's probably the PlayStation 4.
Okay, yeah. Somebody brought up the Smart Glass. I think it was in. I want to say it was in Dead Rising, but anyway.
Oh, yeah, Dead Rising 3 had the smart glass was how you targeted the artillery.
The airstrike.
At least in the demo it was.
Yeah. But yeah, it was beautiful. And they had a little tech demo before just showing, how much better the terrain looks. And, you could see the details on the hands holding the guns, like, little imperfections and scrapes and scratches and stuff like that. It was little stuff in some cases, but it looked really good, and it was one of the prettier games that I saw.
Really?
Yeah.
And I'm sure that it was running silky smooth, 60 frames per second. They've always touted that.
Yeah. And something of note, the theater smelled like a poop dungeon.
Poop dungeon, huh?
Yeah.
I've never been in one of those before. What does it smell like?
Poop. Bad.
Mostly poop.
I associate bad smells with this game. It reeked.
So wait, but all you saw was a single player demo. They didn't really show off any multiplayer?
They did not at all.
Interesting. Okay.
Didn't even mention it.
Yeah?
Yeah. And what you guys need to understand, for those of you who haven't been to these are all very guided.
Yeah.
And they rarely do like Q&As. I mean, you got to speak up and jump on it, and sometimes they'll address it, or a lot of times they'll just say, if you have any other questions, please talk to our PR people outside.
Yeah. And those guys, they're like specially trained robots that know how to just say fuck you if you ask them anything they don't know.
Exactly.
But they say it in a real nice way. They don't say fuck you. They say like, oh, we're not talking about that right now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Right.
All right. Well, you know what? Unless you have anything else to say about Call of Duty Ghosts?
No, not a thing.
No doggles? It's worthless to me as a fucking game.
Hot dog costume.
Hot dog costume. All right, we're going to come back with one more part. We have, how many games do we have left here? 1, 2, 3, 4, and I've got, I think, like 2 or 3 myself. So we got another like 4 or 5. Okay, we got about another 4 or 5 games left to go. So one more, and we're going to be back. Stay tuned. RageSelect.com. Hit the like button. Tell your friends and your mothers and your grandmothers.
Your nanas.
Great-grandfathers and all the people. Tell your dogs and hot dog costumes.